Welcome to WVU Marketing Communications Today, presented by the West Virginia University Reed College of Media, which offers renowned online master's degree programs in marketing communications. We have an outstanding show for you today. Our topic is the power of diversity in communications and media, with our very special guest, Toyin Awesu-Uhuegbu. Toyin is an experienced communications and media relations professional who is passionate about using her skills to help organizations shape public opinion and drive policy changes to build more equitable societies. For the 116th Congress, Toyin served as the Director of Communications for the Congressional Black Caucus, the CBC. As the Director of Communications, Toyin helped the caucus elevate its voice on critical issues affecting the Black community, as well as its position on U.S.-Africa policy. Prior to the CBC, Toyin was a Senior Communications Manager for the National Democratic Institute, where she was responsible for both communications and government affairs for the Institute's Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and gender programs. Toyin's professional experience also includes working in Lagos, Nigeria for 5 years as the head of marketing and corporate communications for a leading investment bank. She is a board member for the 2021 Africa Policy Accelerator at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, an initiative designed to prepare the next generation of U.S.-Africa policymakers in Washington. An ardent communications professional, Toyin has facilitated communications trainings around the world and participated as a communications expert on social justice, U.S.-Africa relations, and diversity, equity, and inclusion panels. Toyin received her Master of Science degree in Integrated Marketing and Communications from West Virginia University and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Journalism from Temple University. Hello, Toyin, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Amy. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. And just because it's so passionate, I'm so passionate about it, and it's a part of my day-to-day role in the communications field. And as we're looking at the changes we're seeing internally, but also externally.
Well, you have such an incredible background, and we're honored to have you on the show to address really such an important topic. As you know, today we'll be focusing on the intersection of diversity and communications and newsrooms around the country and how the shifting demographics of the United States plays a big role in this. We'll also discuss how effective communications can impact policy decisions, brand perception, product marketing, civic engagement, and much more, and how we must harness the power of diversity to determine how and what we communicate. I mean, these are some critical and truly highly relevant issues facing us today. Can you start us off by explaining what diversity in communications and media looks like in 2021?
Diversity in communications in the media in 2021 looks like a lot of things, but I think most importantly, it's going beyond just race. It's looking at cross-cutting skills, people's backgrounds, gender, sexual orientation, religion, educational backgrounds, professional experiences to ensure that our communications and media newsrooms are representative of the United States and the changing demographics of our country. For me personally, I believe that diversity is not just about race, because we often hear, Black people say, they are not a monolith, and that applies to almost all other racial groups. And so I think when organizations are looking at how are they approaching diversity, they need to be able to look at it from a full spectrum. And I'm not just saying, check the box, but do check the box. I think that there has to be some intentionality for this to actually become the norm in organizations. Leaders must truly ask themselves, are their teams diverse? And, are they able to, with the current structure and team that they have, are they able to respond accordingly to the interest in and in ways of the American people? I think more organizations and newsrooms really need to begin having that honest conversation about what they stand for and what they want to achieve, and evaluating if what they have currently supports it. And what this means in having diversity on your staff, it's the positions that people play, their ability to bring all that they are in those roles, and also equal compensation. And so again, it's not just about checking the box to say, oh, I have this one person in this role and so now we're diverse, but can the people who are in these roles actually be their full selves? And I think that's what comes into the equity and inclusion part of diversity. So diversity is making sure that we have these kinds of voices making communications decisions, or also actually doing the communicating, but also are they able to fully be themselves and fully bring these perspectives and be comfortable and confident in their roles as communications professionals or media professionals in doing that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's not only diversity of background, but also that diversity of thought, that really enriches our experiences. It allows for more informed decision, and it leads to more insightful outcomes. So to that point, how important is it for an organization to develop a communications team or newsroom with diversity as a major priority?
Well, the first thing is leadership needs to understand that diversity is a benefit. It's not a hindrance. It's not saying that we're going to uplift these kinds of perspectives and these other perspectives no longer are important. And I think oftentimes that threat sometimes hinders how diverse a team is, or how far they allow for diversity and inclusion to really permeate communications activities. But I think that if you see it as a benefit, that when you have this at the table, you got more ingredients, you have more flavors to the pot, and it makes the soup more, taste better. And I think looking at it from that perspective really helps a leader prioritize diversity. And I think that diversity is also really important because it's a reflection of the demographics of the country. You want your communications teams and your newsrooms to reflect, the people. And what that does is it helps you bring these perspectives. And I think, as communications professionals, we're trying to resonate. Our job is to resonate with people and to, force a particular type of change or shape public opinion. And I think when you don't have all of these, you don't have a myriad of perspectives at the table to also learn from each other, then you really being able to put the best message forward. Last July, NBC Universal Group's Caesar Conde set a goal of 50% diversity in a newsroom. That is amazing for a leader to come out and say, you know what, I've identified we are actually not performing to our best capacity because we lack in diversity. And so therefore, we're setting out this goal for diversity in our newsroom. A news organizations, we have the unique, responsibility to reflect the country and all the communities that we serve. And, that's a statement directly from him. And that's exactly true, whether you are at the NBC Universal Group or you're working on Capitol Hill or you're working in a corporate organization or in a nonprofit organization. We have that responsibility. And while I will have one perspective, it's also equally important for me to engage my colleagues who have different perspectives so that we can be the most effective in the work that we're doing. And we're seeing this in newsrooms as well, and just in some of the visual representations of anchors on in the news and the types of stories that they're reporting on, the way they're reporting of the stories. We're not, I'm not saying that we're doing this, we're already where we should be, but you can see that shift, and you're seeing organizations make that shift and being more intentional in how they communicate, factoring in the diversity of our country right now.
Well, to dovetail on that, how have consumer expectations and the shifting demographics influenced how and what we communicate?
Yes, it has definitely shifted. These shift in demographics have influenced how we communicate. I was recently looking at some of the feedback from Brookings Institute on some of the early results of the surveys released from the 2020 census, and it tells us a lot of things. It's telling us that there's rising racial and ethnic diversity among millennials, Gen Z, and younger groups. And and this target audience comprises a majority of the nation's residents. As communications professionals, that automatically sets off a light bulb. What is important to this target audience, these groups? What interests them? What are things that set it off positively or negatively for them? What are their areas of concerns? And how does my organization respond to that? Or what is it that we offer that will respond to that? And I think as communications professionals, we need to always have the external environment in mind. And so even if you don't have those resources in-house to gain those perspectives, you're not going to be able to actually be effective in helping your organization reach the target audiences of who we are right now. The generational divide and diversity, we're looking at also a cultural generation gap, and so that is down to the way people have public opinion on certain issues, their political choices, what they like to do or don't like to do, how they want to be engaged, what are the issue areas that are now important that weren't maybe mainstream even just 10 years ago. I think sometimes we look at the shifts from like the 60s or the 70s so far back, but I think that we can even look at just changes within the last 5 to 10 years, or even the change of how organizations have had to communicate during this pandemic, and how they've had to use social media or not use social media to, for crisis control, or to reach out to new groups of people on specific issues that have become mainstream. Last summer, we saw the rise or the national awareness around issues of police brutality and the need for police reform, and that took that became front and center. And I think that and that was off the heels of the protests in across the country, and the issue areas that were important to people. And so as you saw organizations and various newsrooms immediately responding to that, and if they weren't responding to that, the backlash that they were receiving from it. So I think that our communications cannot afford to not respond to consumer expectations and the shifting demographics of this country.
Well, on a more personal level, could you tell us about a time when you experienced the power of diversity in communications? And is there a time where you wondered to yourself, who approved that campaign?
Um, well, there's a couple of times, but I will say that I've been on a team where I was the only female, only Black person, and only person of color. And what that did for me is that it also helped me provide the team with an opportunity to see things from my perspective, but also helped me realize that I can't always expect someone to see things from my lens because that isn't their lived experience. And so, we had instances, on the team where, I would share a perspective about something or an image that we would use, and how that image told this particular type of story, or condemn this particular type of group of people in a way that we weren't intending to. And so just talking to my colleagues and realizing that they didn't necessarily see it from this perspective, not intentionally, but that just hasn't been their lived experience. And so being able to have frank conversations in on my communication team was really important to me, and not automatically just ready to say, oh my goodness, I can't believe you didn't see that, or I'm automatically just looking to come down on the person or just be upset, but using it as a learning experience, and also getting their feedback as well, and teaching and learning. And so I think that that what for me, that experience showed me the power of diversity, and I was hope that more people with those perspectives would be added to the team, so that the communications of the organizations would be more targeted, be more would resonate more with the people, and not just domestically in that case, but also internationally. I think another thing that's really important about having these voices, we're already seeing this with the importance of having Black voices, or having people of color engage about the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, because of the historical challenges, and issues faced in the past. And so without these faces, and being able to say, hey, look, these are actually our communication challenges, and therefore we need to do XXX to have this group of people actually feel more confident about taking the vaccine. And so we were seeing more Black doctors use social media, appear on news shows, write op-eds on this, all communication tools to reach the target audience. And I think that if they didn't do that, we'd probably be seeing even more hesitancy from people wanting to take the vaccine. And so also identifying, what potential communication challenges you might have, and making sure that you have those diverse voices to help you reach your target audience, and to help you overcome that barrier is really critical, especially in this space. I think one of the campaigns that I guess more recently I'll remember was Macy's Day. I'm actually a member of Zeta Phi Beta sorority, and this year was our centennial. I'm sorry, it was last year, and so this was actually not this year, it was last year. It was, I think, the Macy's Thanksgiving or Christmas parade, and a social media post went out because the Zeta Phi Beta team who was performing they described them as a dance group, and the uproar on social media was it was so much, and people were really upset that Zeta Phi Beta, a historically Black sorority, a member of the Divine Nine, these were organizations that have been the pillars in the African American community, being described as a dance group. And now there's nothing wrong with a dance group, but that's not what they are, nor is that what they were doing. And so for many people, it was just another example of the newsroom not having someone or people to be able to say this is incorrect, this is not who they are, or simply even just knowing that that is not what they are. And that kind of post coming on the heels of us having our first Black woman of color and woman vice president, who is a member of one of these organizations, Alpha Kappa Alpha, and at least all of the news around what Alpha Kappa Alpha is, and some of these other sororities and fraternities, it was like a shocker. Like, here we go again. Like, has the newsroom or whoever was doing the social media at Macy's just didn't know, or who approved this message? I will say that the immediate backlash, like instantly, had that post. Macy's took that post down, and someone else rewrote it. Also highlighting the history of Zeta Phi Beta sorority, how important the centennial is for the organization, and what the organization has done. And while I'm not at Macy's and I wasn't on that social media team, I really wondered how that could have occurred. And, you know, a lot of things came to my mind, but one of them being there probably is not that much diversity on that team, or they didn't make it a priority to get a full understanding of what this organization is, and, you know, making sure that even if there wasn't someone there who was African American or in the sorority, that they were making diversity a priority and ensuring that they were covering this very important Black organization correctly. So that's probably my most recent. And there's been quite a number of others. I was doing some research. You know, I remember the Vogue cover. There's some discrepancies. There's some, you know, thoughts about why that particular picture was used and which one, you know, showed the vice president in her best light and which one was just you know, was not so positive of her. And, you know, there have been several other campaigns, but I guess because that one hits close to home and I remember it so well, and the conversations around it, you know, I wanted to use that one as an example.
That's an excellent example. And to that point, you know, what soft skills can communications professionals acquire to help really shape their strategy or messaging for leadership?
Well, some soft skills that I have, you know, utilized in my career, I think, you know, and again, because they're soft skills, they're not necessarily something you're going to pick up in a book or in a class, but some basic things like engaging your networks. Don't be afraid to do this. I may be an African American woman, and but that doesn't mean I know everything, and that doesn't mean that I have every lived experience. And so, you know, me engaging my networks and people from different parts of the country and even different parts of the world as I can, also help shape my perspective. Sometimes I need a, you know, a European, you know, insight to a certain particular issue and how are things being handled in the UK. I think being able to do that and, you know, taking that step and engaging my networks to help me get someone that I can talk to give me those perspectives is really important. I think internally on teams, it's also important for conversations between colleagues so that you can gain those perspectives, even if you think the question might be dumb. Oftentimes, the person would be more happier to give you that insight, share with you the challenges, what this community, you know, what ticks them, what they enjoy, what they don't like. Here's what you should not say. Here's how you should say it. These are sensitive areas. Will not be seen as a dumb question. I think being able to be vulnerable as a communications professional and having an open mind is a great way to learn. It forces you to challenge your norms. Um, Another thing that, you know, you could do is, you know, study campaigns that receive negative backlash and learn why it happened and who it offended. Some of these things are repetitive, and so organizations who don't take the time to see why that happened or what they might be doing that could also result in the same thing happening, you're not you're not going to go far. And sometimes it's just bad timing. I mean, I've been a part of a, you know, an initiative that it was just bad timing and the incident happened at just the wrong time. And so we had to do some damage control around that. But I think we have to be sensitive to the climate that we're in. And so we also have to have our ear to social media about what people are saying. That's one of the things I probably would have, when I look back at that moment, that I would have done is, you know, making sure that I explain, look, in this moment right now, this particular thing that we're trying to do is going to result in a backlash because, you know, tensions are high right now. People are not interested in seeing anything like that. People will get upset about stuff like that. It's just not the climate. Maybe 8 months ago, sure, great, no big deal. But right now, this isn't the right thing to do. And we need to have our ear to social media, not just, you know, having an ear to what is happening in the mass media, but what's happening on social media, because we need to listen to what people are saying, listen to the or rather see the sentiments of what people are saying on a particular issue. When I was at WVU, there was a book that we had to read, and it was focused on listening to the groundswell. And what this does is it allows you as a communications professional to also go beyond your network and see how people are feeling about a particular issue before you decide to come out there and draft this particular quote for whoever it is that you're drafting it for, or before your organization writes a press statement, how you should write that press statement, or if this campaign should be adjusted this way, because right now people are not positively responding to this type of word or this type of or this type of product or this type of situation. I think being able to go beyond your network and really seeing, or not just going beyond your network, but stepping outside of your day-to-day job and seeing where other people have failed and what has caused those failures, and making sure that you're taking them into consideration as you develop your communications campaign is a soft skill that you can use to help you shape your strategy and messaging for leadership if you're in that kind of role.
Well, that's an excellent point. The power of social listening and social monitoring, those are excellent tools that really we all should be taking advantage of. You mentioned the vice president earlier. What will be the role of communications in this new administration, both domestically and internationally?
Well, good thing. Maybe because I'm gonna, because I'm a female. The communications team is all female, but they're all from different backgrounds. And so again, it's not just about checking the box that, oh, they're all females. If you look, they're all from different backgrounds. Race, their organizations that they worked in, their academic backgrounds. And so what that does is it brings a variety of perspectives, thoughts, how we should say things, what we should say, what's good, what's not good, what will people like, what will people not like. Are we reaching our base? Are we reaching the people that are not our base, but these issues are important to them? And we're already seeing the power of this messaging across the administration. We're seeing this in how President Biden is communicating with the public on issues, on things that are of importance, on racial equity, on climate change, on his priorities as a president, and also speaking to the current issue that's impacting everyone, and COVID-19. And so I think that, we've tried it one way in the past. And I mean, wouldn't be a bad thing to try it another way. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that we, all female teams have to be the way, even though my board at at CSIS in our Africa Policy Accelerator this year, we're all females, but we're all females from different backgrounds. And so I think just the most important thing is having diversity, but also looking at the layers of what diversity looks like. I think that's going to continue to play a critical role in how this administration communicates domestically and internationally. Internationally, communicating our shared values to our allies, but also rebuilding relationships. Today, the president, he had a message to the African Union Summit participants, and for me, it was very refreshing. It it struck a tone of partnership, mutual respect, support, and not referring to African nations as whole countries as they have been in the past. And I think when you're looking at mending broken relationships, it's going to be in how you say it, and words are very important. And we're already seeing how the right words will help this administration be able to rebuild those relationships, identify new areas of relationships, but also making sure that they're supporting Americans and the goals of our economy as well. And so, what's going to be important to the people. It's one thing if we're doing it in policy, but if we're not effectively communicating it, there will be a gap. And knowing that you're not just communicating it to a policy audience or to diplomats, but making sure that the people on ground understand that. And so using language that resonates with them is going to be very important. But in order to do that, you need to have those kind of perspectives, at least at the table, and a team willing to gain those perspectives, even if they are, that if they don't have it immediately at the table. Who can we engage to help us better understand the best way to reach those audiences?
Absolutely. I think we have time for one last question. Looking ahead, what are your 2021 communications predictions?
Well, looking ahead and just looking at what we've seen so far, at least in this first month of the year, I do believe we can expect to see more companies putting diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront of their communication strategies. Those who don't will feel the pinch in their bottom line. You know, people are people will not support it. People will not buy from you, and with the power of social media, we can see that amplified at extremely heightened levels. And so, organizations can no longer put that on the back burner or just say that they're doing it and tick the box. They really need to make this at the forefront of their communication strategies. And that includes at the forefront of, hiring and making sure that they are expanding their reach to get those kinds of voices at the table and to bring that mixture to their communication strategy. So I think we'll see more of that in terms of organizations, hiring, and also, organizations making that a priority for the work that they do and how they do their work. You'll see a lot of that interwoven into a company's goals and objectives, because that's what's going to be really important to people. I also think that we'll see more companies being thoughtful in their engagement, just because now, one wrong mistake could put you in a social media crisis. And I think that organizations will see that it's not about just constantly communicating. It's going to be what we communicate, because we don't want to make that one mistake. And so you'll see quality become more of a priority than necessarily volume. I also think that companies they won't fret too much when they do get into when they do trend or face a social media crisis, because there's a crisis and a new fire the next day. Maybe 30 minutes later, you're not even trending anymore. So I think that, again, it'll go back to quality versus volume, but I also think that organizations won't feel, or organizations and leadership may not necessarily fret too hard on, when they do face these kinds of things, just because something else comes up immediately. I also think we'll see more authentic stories and less reliance on celebrity voices. There's just been, there's constantly a different type of backlash. And also, we're in an era right now where people want to hear real people, want to see real experiences. They want to see, real people, not always a celebrity. They want to see someone who represents them. If you're selling, a product, they want to see, do you have me in mind? I think there will continue to be a rise in social media influencers, but I do think that more people will be looking to go beyond just, is this what this influencer buys? Is this what this influencer says and does? Just because a lot of things have been demystified these last, especially during COVID-19, and we're seeing more authenticity in just general people and how they are communicating. So using TikTok and Twitter and Instagram Reels and all of this kind of stuff, we're just seeing real people, and that's what is effective. And I think we'll continue to see that this year.
Well, Toyin, it has been such an honor having you on the show today, and truly a privilege to be a part of this conversation. Thank you for joining us. and sharing your incredible experience and insights. I have just one more question. How can our listeners contact you or find you online?
Great. So I have a LinkedIn page, which is, just under my name. I'm also on Twitter. My handle is Miss Curly T85, and that's MS and then Curly CURLY and T and then 85. So I'm on Twitter. Tweets are my own, as they say. And of course, I can also be reached via email, and I'm happy to have you all share my personal email. I always love, getting feedback from other WVU students and just alumni in the network as well. And it was a great program. I took it quite a number of years ago, but I think it truly reshaped my thinking about communications and not just going into things from a tactical perspective, but looking at what are we doing internally, but also what's going on externally so that we make sure that we hit the mark and we make sure that we really reach our target audiences. And so I've carried this along with me into, each one of my roles. And I have to say that, if I could do it again, I would definitely do this program all over again.
Fantastic. Well, you've been listening to WVU Marketing Communications Today. Thank you for joining us. And again, a special thanks to our guest, Toyin Awesu-Uhuegbu. Be sure to visit go.wvu.edu/MC today to view our upcoming sessions, listen to previous recordings, and subscribe to receive updates.